and welcome to International Reality. This is episode 3, and today we're going to be covering Married at First Sight Australia. For those of you joining us for the first time, we're covering season 9 and we're up to episode 2. Season 9 is currently streaming in the United States. Last week, we watched the Bucks and Hens nights, which are the bachelor and bachelorette parties, and we also got to watch the first 2 weddings. Today, we're going to find out a little bit more about the start of the first 2 couples as they begin their marriage journey, as well as watching the next 2 weddings. We start this episode with Tamara and Brent waking up in their hotel room, and Tamara is up first and making a really loud coffee. I'm not sure if it's the producers or not, but the machine is probably one of the loudest coffee makers I've ever heard. Brent is lying in bed, and that obviously doesn't last for long as it wakes him up. He says that his wife is a handful and she's the loudest human being on earth. Tamara shares that she anticipates that Brent's going to be a pain in the ass as a husband. When we see them together in the kitchen making coffee, he calls her cupcake. They cheers their coffee mugs and things seem to be amicable. He says that he senses sexual chemistry between them and thinks that that's going to become even more severe once they get past the fighting. She just generally looks annoyed at the way he's drinking coffee, and it's hard to tell with this couple. It feels like they're nitpicking at each other again, just bantering, but there also could be something more to it. I think we're going to see if that goes one way or the other throughout the course of the season. We then go to Selin and Anthony, and Selin's sitting in bed. It's the day after the wedding. Anthony comes in with a bowl of fruit and tries to feed it to her, which is a little bit strange, but he's also trying to be cute by the looks of it. She complains he's giving her the big pieces of fruit, and Selin shares with the camera that while she was asleep, she actually forgot that she'd gotten married to Anthony the day before, so she was a little surprised to wake up next to him in bed. He offers to airplane the food into her mouth, which she's understandably totally not into because she's not 2 years old. And I'm getting the sense that the day before was so amazing, today's not going so well. Selin shares that she still wants an old school gentleman, but feels that she's receiving that, exactly what she asked for, and is finding it to be a bit full on in practice. We get to meet with the experts again this week, and they're going to reveal why they picked the next 2 couples, starting with Domenica and Jack. They matched them because they think both individuals are kind, authentic, and warm. Domenica's taken a brave step in their view in terms of bouncing back after her divorce and being willing to give this experiment a go, and as a result they see that she has some vulnerability. They think that Jack's going to be able to be there for Domenica through thick and thin, that he's as loyal as the day is long, and that he won't run away. Mel goes so far as to describe them as her favourite couple. We then have another Zoom sequence with her parents, who I quite like already. Her dad is wearing a bow in his hair with his ponytail. They're still arguing over the Windex from last week being in the Zoom shot. And basically, we get to see a little bit more of Domenica and where she comes from. Domenica says that her friends would describe her accurately as a princess bogan, which she loves. When she tells her parents that she needs to tell them something, her dad immediately yells, "Are you pregnant?" When she shares that she's getting married at first sight, her dad has a picture of her as a young girl already prepared and pulls it up and says, "You'd better look after my little girl," presumably to her husband-to-be. Domenica talks a little bit about her previous relationship. She says that they moved in together within 3 months of dating, that she really thought that he was the love of her life. They had what she describes as a big, beautiful wedding, and she still thinks of it that way, and then says that everything fell apart within 2 months. And she said it was super tough to tell that to him, to her parents, and to his parents. Domenica mentioned this a little bit last week, but she refers again to Italian culture and says that it's typical to stay in marriages where people are not happy, and even when other people know that that couple is not happy, they'll stay together. So she ended up losing friendships that were 15 years old for not just going through with the wedding and the marriage for the rest of her life. Domenica acknowledges that she wasn't actually happy prior to the wedding and that she should have said something before that, but she didn't want people to be disappointed. And going through her experience of this, she said it made her feel like a really shitty person as a divorced woman, and wondered if anyone was really going to want her again. These days, Domenica says that she's healed. She still believes in marriage and has the hope to still be able to emulate her parents' marriage, which she really looks up to. The parents share that they hope that her husband-to-be is a nice Italian boy, and she shares that she hopes he likes dogs. We flash to Jack, who is saying that he's a huge dog person and how he hopes his wife is too, as that might be a deal breaker if she's not, so they're in luck there. He talks about being close with his family. They share they want him to marry a beautiful Italian girl so that, in their words, the heritage will stay strong. Jack describes himself as nurturing and a shoulder to cry on in his relationships and friendships as well. He talks with John, the expert, about how he's painfully nice and has actually been told that a couple of times. So the bottom line about Jack is he cares, he's sensitive, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He has been taken advantage of and used in relationships before, and it's hurtful and continues to play on his mind now. He says he's doing the experiment because he doesn't do things with half effort, which is interesting because a lot of participants in the experiment say this because they think it's an easier way to find a life partner. The experts interestingly describe Domenica and Jack as an Italian power couple. I don't think that's how a relationship would be described in the US version. The experts go on to describe Ella and Mitch and why they were matched. Alessandro says that Ella is, in her view, one of the most interesting participants on this season, that Mitch is an enigma. He's quite introverted, he hasn't really been in a long-term relationship before, and he's quite cynical about the process as well as the experts, and can they really do what they say they will do? Ella, Alessandro describes as being straight out of an Instagram account. She's beautiful, young, very modern, but also has a lot of depth that you might not expect from someone that looks the way that she does. Ella's been single for 9 years and, in her words, has been rejected and let down by men repeatedly, but also is confident, independent, and self-assured. She's asked if people think she's fine, and her response is, oh, hundy, as in 100%. And so because she looks the way she does, people tend to think that she's happy, that she's always having fun. And on Instagram and other social media, she shares that you can really make it look however you want to. And so things tend to look a certain way, a really positive light. In practice, she said she's actually usually in bed by herself with one of the cats and that she's looking for cuddles that are not from her cats. She does go out on dates and describes herself as an active single woman, but she feels like she's been constantly disappointed, which has been difficult. She describes the dating world as pretty brutal. She tends to attract F-boys, commitment phobes, and people who really just want to have fun and are not looking for anything serious. One guy in particular apparently told Ella that she could have him on the weekends, which she was not interested in. This kind of dating life has really affected her self-esteem and self-worth and made her question if she'll ever have a family. So in the meantime, for 9 years, it's easier to be on her own. She doesn't feel satisfied and wants someone she can do everything with. Her wish list for a guy is a dream man, olive skin, light green eyes, brown hair, fit, loyal, independent, courageous. She didn't think she was picky before this experiment, but realized through the interview process that she actually was. You'll see that her list of requirements really does start with the physical, and then she adds a couple of personality traits on at the end. So sounding a little superficial to start with. We then get to meet Mitch. He says he's more picky than his friends and that he's happy being single, but he's also open to love. They show a video of him with a cooler and a fishing rod, fishing at a river. Again, they love the videography on this show. He says that he thinks that you should take love seriously. They then show that he's from the Gold Coast, and he says he's not confident talking to women in group situations. He's not the type of person who tends to go to events like at festivals or go to nightclubs. And then production shows him walking along the beach with a towel wrapped around his shoulders. He's throwing a ball. It's all very aesthetically focused, I would say. He says he prefers to be by himself and he likes alone time. The experts are very cynical in return about Mitch. John says he doubts that Mitch has tried everything in terms of trying to find his partner. He says that he's not desperate, that he wants to be with someone like-minded, that he enjoys spending time with, and he wants to grow with them and have a family and be with them for the rest of his life. He just hasn't been able to find anyone. He actually seemed to get quite annoyed with John, the expert, during this scene, justifying himself, came across as quite defensive, and he's doubtful that the experts can find him the right person out of tens of thousands of people. That said, on his own, he said he can also use social media and go to bars and clubs to meet someone, but realizes that the chance of actually meeting someone he wants to spend time with and grow and learn with is pretty slim. He says to John the reason that he thinks this might work is, well, you're meant to be the experts. John reminds Mitch that if he is lukewarm about the experiment, it's not really going to matter who's put in front of him. It's going to fail because he's not truly into it. So Mitch shares he's looking for someone level-headed, with a good heart, a good family, confident, spontaneous, someone with good energy, good vibes, and someone he clicks with. The experts debrief on Mitch afterwards and share that they're really preparing for him to question and challenge them throughout the experiment. And Mel in particular shares that she's secretly looking forward to proving Mitch wrong when he gets to meet Ella. For someone so cynical about the experts' ability to do their job, it really makes you question why Mitch is on this show. I think this is going to be a couple that's probably quite focused on physical appearance and maybe is looking for a little bit of screen time in the influencer world. We're now at the day of the wedding. Mitch and Ella are the first up, and there's a screenshot of Mitch in the shower. Ella is having a cup of coffee, looking at the Sydney Harbour Bridge. Looks like it's at a really cool location, their hotel. Mitch says he's not really feeling nervous yet. He wonders if he'll start to, in his words, shit himself on the drive to the wedding ceremony. He's wearing a beige suit. It shows him getting changed into that with a pink tie. We're then back with Domenica and Jack. Jack is putting on a dark blue suit and looking at the wedding band that he's got for Domenica. He's at a gorgeous beachfront location of some description. They show Domenica standing pensively at the shore. She's wrapped in a blanket and looking like she might have been crying, and she's kind of talking about how worried she is about sharing that she's been divorced. This is really a huge plot point at this point in the show. Domenica starts getting ready. She's putting her own makeup on. Ella had a makeup artist, so obviously they have some kind of choice about how they get ready for this wedding. Domenica does have someone helping her with her hair. Domenica shares that she doesn't want to fail again, but she also doesn't want to, not reach what she wants in life because she's afraid. So she decides to face her fears and go ahead with the experiment. She puts on her dress. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a little bit sparkly, and she just lights up and says it really feels real now. It's an absolute transformation of a person watching Domenica from the start of this scene through to seeing her put on her bridal gown and just really shine. She just looks so excited, and there's lots of positive energy around her. So now they show her back at the same shore, standing confidently, her veil's blowing behind her. She says she didn't regret anything that came before now because she healed herself, and now she's allowed to decide what she wants for her life, and that's that she wants to fall in love again. Jack's on the way to the venue. He shares that he just wants to be a good husband, even if that sounds cheesy. The venue itself is really cool. It looks like a renovated barn. It does look like there's maybe a couple more family members here than there were at the other weddings. There seem to be 4 people sitting on one side of the aisle versus the 2 we've seen at both of the previous weddings. It's a really fun aisle. There are a lot of beautiful flowers and these white fluffy plants. We call them toys in New Zealand. I'm not sure what they're called here, but they're these big fluffy things that look kind of like cat's tails. Jack is laughing and smiling and excited. He tells the room that he's nervous. They shoot to his mom, and her facial expression, she looks kind of annoyed for some reason. One of his friends asks if he's going to give her a kiss, his wife, not his mom, and he says, "We'll see, mate." His mother says, "Oh my Lord, I think she's really nervous." Domenica comes down the driveway in a limo, and she's saying to herself, "This is really happening, oh shit," and suddenly says, "There's horses," as she sees some horses in a paddock on the driveway. She says, "Oh my God," a bunch of times, "This is really happening," and once again announces she's kind of shitting herself. So she has that in common with Jack. She reflects again that her parents are a living example of love at first sight and tells a really cute story about how they met and how beautiful it is. So evidently her dad rocked up to her mum's family farm when they were both young, and he was there to buy a box of tomatoes, and the mum's grandfather said, "This is a single man," and the mum looked at him and thought he's going to be the one. So cute story there that's really inspired her with relationships. For the first reveal, as she walks down the aisle, everybody is laughing and smiling. Jack looks at her and says, "You look beautiful," and they agree that they're both nervous. Jack says that she's beautiful, she has bright blue eyes, a huge smile, and he's over the moon. It's really cute. They both look at each other and say, "I look like this, I look like this." Domenica shares that she really likes how she feels like Jack's really looking at her, and makes a joke about not saying dirty jokes at the altar. Basically, Domenica wanted someone with a really kind smile and beautiful eyes, and so she's so happy that's what she's been given. The family seems excited. The couple very quickly figures out they're both Italian, that he's northern, she's southern, and she shares that she's a fiery Italian. They start with their vows, and they're just standard nice vows, marrying a stranger, but then it emerges that they're both vegetarian, which they're both very excited about. During Jack's vows, he shares that she's marrying both him and his dog Finn. And so she whistles, and this really adorable little dog, Finn, comes down the aisle wearing a matching suit. So cute. He picks up Finn, and they both have a cuddle with Domenica. Finn gives Domenica a big kiss on the face, showing he at least approves of the wedding, and then Finn joins the family on the groom's side of the aisle. Then Domenica and Jack kiss on the mouth, the family claps and smiles. Domenica says that he's checked off the list of being Italian, dog lover, and vegetarian. The guy I was dreaming of, he really is that guy. This couple obviously seems to have a lot in common. I wouldn't say having a dog and being vegetarian, and I guess they could be values in some way, or at least tied to them, but they just had a really good vibe and energy around them. I know Domenica's nervous about the divorce conversation, but obviously that doesn't define a person. She thinks it does at the moment. I'm really interested to see how Jack and his family deal with that. We then join Ella and Mitch. Mitch is also staring at his wedding band, which looks very similar to the one that Jack had for Domenica. Ella is conscious that today's going to be one of the biggest days she's ever going to experience in her life. She says she's never doubted this at all, and that she's right where she's supposed to be. She describes herself as looking like a warrior. She's wearing a headpiece. Her tattoos on her back and her chest are displayed through her dress. She looks very elegant. She says she's grateful for her years as a single woman, as they've got her to where she is, but now she's ready for her man, and she needs a good one. Mitch believes he's good at first impressions and that he knows how to stand tall and look her in the eye. Mitch seems really posy. He seems like a smooth guy who is very conscious of how he looks to others. That's at least my take. And so he's worried, he's thinking about how to stand and how to look, and not maybe who he is as a person. He says he's independent. He likes to go with the flow and do his own thing. He keeps talking about how he's ready to be open and vulnerable and let his walls down. He says he's still skeptical. He doesn't want to force falling in love. We see that their venue is really beautiful. It's ornate. There's statues in the yard. It seems like an old building. There are candles, lots of dark reds. It's a really moody, romantic, dramatic vibe compared to some of the other looks. Mitch says he doesn't have a particular type. He's looking for someone he can connect with on a deeper level, and he wants a spark between them and to really click with his wife, and that he won't settle for less than that. Ella also talks about not being prepared to settle and how she wants to feel real fire with her partner. So both of them are really expecting sparks right off the bat. I know sometimes we see that immediately in Married at First Sight, and other times it takes a little while to build. Sometimes it's just not there at all. But both are saying they're open, and I don't see the same level of skepticism from Ella that we're certainly seeing from Mitch. Mitch doesn't believe the experts are as good as what they say, but says he's also helpful and wants to be proved wrong. So everyone's on the same page here. They want it to work. There's just a degree of skepticism coming from Mitch. We get to the big reveal with Ella walking down the aisle by herself. She's kind of hiding behind her flowers, but he can see her dress and most of her face. He tells her twice she looks gorgeous. She sees him and keeps saying, "Oh, wow," and she tells him he smells really good. He tells her she has a great smile. She tells him he's gorgeous and looks amazing. He says so does she. She says that they hit the nail on the head for what she asked for. He agrees. Gorgeous eyes and smile. He says she's short and has a great figure. She says that he's groomed. He's wearing a cologne that she knows, and it turns out to be Mont Blanc because she asks him. She shares that smelling amazing is huge for her, and the scent is huge. And she asks if he can smell her, and he says that he can, and that there's a lot going on. And then the celebrant actually intervenes and asks if they can start the ceremony. So there's a lot of commentary about the way each other looks. They seem pleased about it, but definitely a focus on physical appearance. It's also like a big deal apparently for Ella how he smells. I guess that's a thing. We move to the vows, and Mitch reads off cue cards. He is making eye contact. It's like he's practiced doing some hand gestures, like he's doing a speech as well. He promises to give 100% of himself. She describes the experience of him giving his vows as intense in a good way. She tells him his vows were good and all she needed. And she said that it's nice hearing it from a really gorgeous man, and it feels like he means it. Ella then reads her vows and has to use the cards to fan herself because she's all afluster. In her vows, she said she fantasizes about a man with integrity and character, and then she starts going into the Latin origin of the word integrity and how wholesome is sexy. I've noticed by now that there doesn't seem to be anyone else at the ceremony. It's just the officiant and Mitch and Ella, which I thought was interesting, especially how Mitch was making comments about people being from a good family and all these kinds of things. In her vows, Ella says that she's into honesty, good vibes only, and is excited to embark on a crazy journey, but adds, oh baby, it's going to be absolutely elite doing it with you. I thought that was an interesting choice of words. At this point, Mitch gets down on one knee and proposes, and she's ecstatic and says, where does this guy come from? They kiss, and Ella says, damn, so far, it's everything I asked for. We then move to the photo sessions, and Ella and Mitch are making out so much during their photos that the photographer has to keep trying to get their attention so that they can do different poses and things. Domenica and Jack are also posing for photos. Domenica's obsessed with the letter M. She's got some psychic, or as she says, psycho energy, and wants to know how it fits with Jack. They try and go through different reasons for an M, and originally they decide it's because he lives in a place called Miller's Point, but then he shares that his last name is Miller, and Domenica's super excited. She announces to the camera that she's psycho and that her psycho predictions were right. Again, she does not say psychic. They're also kissing a bit more than the other couples yesterday. Jack says the experts have nailed it, that Domenica is beautiful, lovely, absolutely unique. He's worried that her dress will get wet at one point, and she just shares it'll get duck shit on it. So it's really a rough around the edges group. She gets stuck on the floor walking into the meal, and she's helped to get unstuck and goes to meet with the rest of the group. There's lots of smiling and everybody cheers. She says he's gorgeous and seems really kind and sweet, and she teaches him to look in the eyes while cheersing, and also has him help her arrange her dress on the chair. They ask what he was expecting. He says a smile on the face, blue eyes, for them to love dogs, and that she checked every box. And she asks, what were you expecting in terms of looks? And he says, F yes, you're beautiful. Domenica says she's genuinely very happy with Jack and how much they have in common. Conversation then gets really deep and important. They get asked questions like their views on Justin Timberlake and a line on the song Mirrors. They talk about the Drake album. His mother does not know who Drake is. The producer asks about concerns, and Domenica says she's worried she hasn't told him she's been married before yet. In terms of the last relationship, she asked Jack when that was for him, and he says 3 to 4 years ago. It's like she's trying to ease into this conversation. He says, what about you? She says it was about 18 months ago, and he asks what happened there, but then he's really polite and says if that's okay to ask in a public setting, and it doesn't really pressure her to respond. She's hesitant and shares that it seems like a very early conversation and would prefer to talk to him not here. She shares with the camera that she's effing shitting herself now. We move to the reception for Ella and Mitch. Again, it's just the two of them in an intimate reception. The MC describes how the chemistry is palpable. And they sit down for a meal. She says she wants to know everything about him. And the first question is whether he prefers being known as Mitch or Mitchell, and he says that she can call him what she prefers, and she decides that she's going to call him Mitchell, and that seems really natural to her. She says he's a 10 out of 10. His eyes are beautiful, and he looks really good, and he says she's gorgeous, confident, and charismatic. There's a lot of eye contact between them, and they keep licking their lips at each other and saying they're hungry for a meal, which clearly is code. It's kind of gross watching it as a viewer, but they do seem really into each other. I'm not sure if they are talking about anything deep, but from a physical attraction standpoint, they definitely seem interested. For Jack and Domenica, a friend shared that it was a match made in heaven between them, noticed the way that Domenica looked at Jack. And again, Domenica says he's very handsome, and she was really happy. They do a bit of a juxtaposition at that point. Jack goes outside with his mum. They've got blankets wrapped around them, and they're walking around just chatting. And then Domenica's inside with all of the wedding guests sitting down together. So Jack and his mum are chatting. He shares that he's really happy, and his mum says, so you should be. They talk about how they already have a connection, and the mum seems happy with the match. In the wedding guest room, Domenica's sharing with Jack's best mates that she's been married before. One of the friends asks how long ago it was, and she said it was for 2 months, and shares that it was 18 months ago. They ask how ready she is to give herself to Jack, and she emphasizes that she's very ready. She does share with them that being 28 and divorced isn't where she saw herself, and that she's looking for a loving relationship with someone who wholeheartedly loves her for everything she is. And his friends say, well, that's Jack. She is super scared of being judged, and especially by someone she really wants to like. And she shares with the producers at this point, it's because she really does like him, and that's scary and confronting. She asks how his family's going to respond, and the friends say that Jack's mum, Monica, is looking out for him, that she raised him herself for many years and is an incredible mum. I'm getting thoughts now, is he going to be a mama's boy? I guess we'll see. But they encourage her to really respect Jack and be honest with him, and think in return he'll give her what she needs. Ella and Mitch are now eating dinner. The food's served, and Mitch reveals to Ella that he's vegan. She looks absolutely shocked, and then it turns out to be a joke. She says she's really gullible. He then asks her if she has kids, and shares that he himself has 2 boys. Again, she's shocked, and he admits that's not true. So Mitch is full of the jokes, and Ella really does seem gullible. They do both agree that they want kids someday. The producer asks Ella if she sees sexual chemistry with him, and they flash to her shoveling giant pieces of steak into her mouth, I guess trying to be seductive or something. She says there's a lot of sexual chemistry there. She tells Mitch that she doesn't mind trying new things. He asks what she was expecting from a husband, and she said definitely not you, and that he took her by surprise and made her feel very hot. She says she thinks she blacked out for a minute and was really flustered when she first saw him. He said he was also speechless and noticed her smile and teeth. Ella then shares that personality is a big factor for her in relationships, and that she's fallen for some people based on their personality and not looks at all, and Mitch agrees. Based on what I've seen so far today, I find that incredibly hard to believe on both counts. Ella starts making comments that Mitch sounds like her in terms of his responses, and something in the atmosphere turns a little bit. He says that he asked for someone very confident who knows what they want and goes after it, and that was really all of his requirements, and Ella shares it was basically her criteria as well. Ella reflects on how it's been normal for her to attract the wrong type of guy. She's kind of nervous hearing all the right words from Mitch, given, in her words, he looks like someone who should be on the cover of a magazine. So at this point, she starts talking about self-sabotage and self-doubt, and whether he's telling her what she wants to hear, and kind of talks about how this is starting to ruin the situation for her. In my view, he does seem to be a really smooth talker who does tell people what they want to hear. I'm sure he does that to ladies all the time. Even in the way he delivered his vows, I got the sense that he was practiced, as I mentioned before, and knew exactly how he was coming across. So we're not potentially seeing the true Mitch in these interactions. We're then back with Domenica and Jack. Everyone's now gathered at the table over a meal, and Domenica asks to take Jack's mum, Monica, out for a chat and ask for her advice. Monica asks for her first impression, and Domenica says she noticed Jack's smile and beautiful blue eyes, and that she can definitely feel that there's something there, and that she's landed a great guy. Monica shares that he's come from very strong values. The family is very family-oriented. And trying to use that as a segue, Domenica goes in to share that she's been divorced, but before she can get a word out, Monica goes on to say that life's never boring with Jack. He has a lot to offer. They got to see him ski all the time. Domenica keeps trying to interject, but Monica's on an absolute roll. She's talking about how Jack's a great communicator, how she's been told she's brought Jack up so well, and how he's such a good boy. And Domenica tries again. Monica then interrupts and said he's also an oversharer. Perhaps he got that from his mum. She then says that she's not looking for Domenica to be the virgin bride. Domenica tries another time, and Monica adds he just has so much to offer. So at this point, it's clear it's almost like Monica's coming across like a salesperson trying to advocate for her son, and Domenica's just trying to tell her new mother-in-law she's been divorced before. Domenica ultimately gives up. Back with Ella and Mitch, Ella by this stage is getting really nervous. Her self-doubt is coming in, and so she calls a friend of hers. She spends the first part of her call looking at herself in the camera, obviously fixing her hair and earrings, and then they get into a conversation. Her friend asks who she married, because she doesn't know, obviously, and Ella says he's freaking gorgeous, he smells divine, again on that smell, his eyes are just like heaven, and that there's definitely chemistry there. The friend says she wasn't expecting Ella to be like this, and Ella says neither was she. The friend asks if Ella has any hesitations, and Ella shares that everything he was saying sounded like something Ella would say, and that she feels like he's telling her everything she wants to hear and is bringing out self-doubt. She's used to being let down, and she knows that she's built walls up as a result. So it's hard for her to believe his words when he says them, and she wants to make sure she asks the right questions without making him run for the hills. At this point, we see what's probably Ella's insecurity coming out. She asks what makes Mitch feel ready for this in terms of the experiment, and says a hunky man like you, who obviously has been on Bumble, Tinder, Hinge, and says that he's probably got so many gorgeous women DMing him. Mitch pauses and then says, yeah. So suddenly he doesn't know the words that he should be saying, but quickly follows up with that he's tried all the traditional ways of dating, including social media, but hasn't had luck out of it or anything substantial out of it. He felt like the experts could speed up the process of finding actual love, which takes work. So interestingly, as mentioned before, Jack is finding this something that is actually that he can put his whole self into, whereas Mitch, who's skeptical of the whole thing, is seeing the experiment as something that can fast-track his way to love. At this point, Ella asks if she can move her chair closer to Mitch, and he invites her to bring it around next to him. And then she says she feels like she wants to kiss him, which they do. It's really, really loud kissing, and again, it's super awkward being the viewer and gross to hear. It's almost at this point like Ella was trying to shove down her doubts by letting her physical attraction to Mitch override it and focusing on making out rather than actually getting to know each other, but obviously they'll have time this season to do that. It's still early days, and there's clearly at least a physical attraction to kick things off. So some hope for this couple, interested to see more depth in their conversations. We return from a break to see Mitch and Ella standing up and kind of swaying against each other with no music. I think it's meant to be their first dance. They're making out a bunch. Again, there's no guests at the wedding, so they're just kind of swaying against each other without music. They then decide to leave, and they're holding hands as they drive away. The camera shows us that Mitch is wearing boat shoes and no socks. I'm not surprised at all to see that. And I'm not sure if production is just having fun with this or not, but they continue to lick their lips at each other. I'm not sure if it's really happened this often. It's kind of bizarre at this point. They arrive at their bridal suite. It's this beautiful hotel room with an amazing view of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And Ella shares with the camera that she wants to jump Mitch's bones, but that she has rules. And she shares that it's usually a 3-day rule. It may be a 3-date rule. They pop a bottle of champagne, and she asks if he usually sleeps in pajamas. He has a shower, and she shares that she wants to see him with his shirt off. She's wearing cute pajamas herself, and he comes out in boxer shorts. She comments on him not having any chest hair, and he asks if she's a hair person, and she says no, but he literally doesn't have any hair on his chest. She asks if their wedding counts as a date for the purposes of her 3-date rule, and she asks him for a kiss again before going to sleep, and then they turn the lights off. So she seems to want to do more than that, and she does keep asking him to kiss her. Domenica and Jack are then at their cake cutting ceremony, and between them there's no major conflict like there was with Tamara and Brent. They did apparently break part of the cake, but there are laughs about it rather than criticisms or conflict, and their friends and family joke that they're like an old married Italian couple. At that point, they walk outside in the dark to have some time together, and it's raining. He tells her she looks picturesque and randomly says the word quintessence, and they reflect on how it's really their first moment alone. Domenica's worried that when she shares she's married, he might say, it's fine, it's okay, but that deep down he might not want someone who was married before. So at this point, she's really preempting his actual reaction and then what he really means by his reaction. So she's in a world of worrying and second guessing. Finally, it's the big reveal. Domenica shares that she was married before and that she was worried to share it. And Jack's reaction, first of all, is to ask her, or really just say 2 months. He asked what happened and then asked if that's okay for him to ask, so very respectful here. And then we, of course, go to an ad because all producers love a cliffhanger. When we return, Domenica shares that she wasn't happy and that she hadn't been happy 6 months before the wedding and shouldn't have gone through with it, but she did. And Jack is just so kind with his reaction. He says that it would be inappropriate for him to judge anyone on their past because everyone has one, everyone has something, and that's where people learn. Her honesty shows him that she's in it, and so it doesn't bother him at all or show up as anything negative. In my view, Jack's response couldn't have been any more perfect, and clearly it's a relief for Domenica. Jack goes to the point of actually empathizing and saying he didn't say anything for the last year of his 4-year relationship where he wasn't happy, so he understands. And Domenica describes his response as exactly what she was wanting, that it made her feel at ease and not judged. Jack says, if it's big for you, it's big for me. We're married, and that's the point of this. Domenica says she never imagined being as happy as she is and how the experts really got it right, that today was a huge puzzle piece in her healing. Then they kiss and decide it's time to go home. So this couple's already coming out strong. She shared this big secret that to her was, potentially a deal breaker for both of them, and he just reacted with so much grace and kindness, and it really didn't seem like a big deal to him, and they're off to a great start. Well, we're done with this episode, and there's a flash of what we can expect next time. Holly is in the mirror saying personal affirmations. Based on a few screens that we get from the producers, it looks like it could be a bit of an awkward episode with that wedding in particular. There's also a nighttime wedding with Selin saying she's not going to sacrifice anything more to make her parents happy, so it could be some family conflict there. And then next episode, we're apparently off to the honeymoon, as well as the honesty box kicking off. So really looking forward to seeing that. Join me again. I really look forward to recapping episode 3 with you. And feel free to message us if you've got any questions about the show on international_reality on Instagram. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you soon.